You must have heard many times that multitasking is terrible. But today I'm going to talk about the real science behind multitasking. What happens in your brain when you switch your attention from task A to task B? About a decade ago, when I left my job to do a startup, I had my first employee, a young, fresh graduate, very smart guy. And we would be sitting in office, just two of us, and working together. And I noticed one behavior pattern. So while he was working between his work, he would just check his WhatsApp. Initially, he would do it like maybe once an hour, half an hour, and so on. But after some time, I started noticing he would do this every minute, every 2 minutes. And it was very, very unusual. But today, think about it. Today, practically, that's how many of us are working. If not WhatsApp, maybe it's Slack or it's some other mechanism. But while working, our Slack or some messaging app is open, notifications are coming. And whenever some notification comes, we leave our work and do what we call a quick check. We just quickly glance at the email or at the message and then come back to our task or to some other task. Also, while working on one task, something else comes up, and then we leave this and go and work on something else. And this round robin, it goes on and on. Now, you must have heard many times that multitasking is terrible, but today I'm going to talk about the real science behind multitasking. What happens in your brain when you switch your attention from task A to task B? When we are working on something, you're working on, let's say, a particular project or working on a presentation. In your mind, in your brain, what has happened is a certain neural circuit or network is activated. Okay. And that neural circuit is helping you be engaged with that task. Now, if you have to leave that presentation and go and check your message or email, what happens? Now, your brain has to suppress or switch off that neural circuit and activate another neural circuit or another neural network. Now, this process of shutting down one circuit and amplifying another circuit, this process, it's messy. It's not a very clear-cut, easy process. Think of this analogy. Let's say you have a whiteboard and you're writing something on that whiteboard, and then after that you erase it and write something else. Now, if the process of erasing is not very good, what will happen? Some bit of previous writing also will be there, and then the new writing also is there, so it becomes messy. Exactly like that, when we switch tasks, especially when we do it rapidly from task A to task B, when we switch our attention, our brain is not able to cleanly, completely shut down the previous network and activate the new network. Quite often, the previous network that you're trying to shut down, it is still there and it leaves a residue. In fact, it is called attention residue. This is the name given by Professor Sophie Leroy, who pioneered this concept of attention residue. So whenever you switch tasks, especially when you do it rapidly, you are creating a lot of attention residue. And the end result is that the neural circuit pertaining to the previous task and that pertaining to the new task, both are active at the same time. So now your mind is neither here nor there. Both those things are there in your mind simultaneously. What does it do? First of all, you don't feel focused. Quite often you must have experienced this. You're working on something, but your mind is not fully there. You're trying to read a book, read a paragraph. It's not making sense. You read it again, twice, three times. Still, it's not making sense because your mind is half there, half somewhere else. When we keep multitasking, this is what happens. And the result of that is we are not able to understand complex concepts. We're not able to summarize things. You go to a meeting and you're listening vaguely. You hear sentences, but what is the synthesis of the whole discussion? You will struggle to bring it out. On top of that, you become inefficient, start making mistakes. And because your brain has to make this extra effort to tamp down on one circuit, amplify the other circuit, it consumes more cognitive resources. It is stressful, it is tiring, you get exhausted. So imagine multitasking, it's making you more inefficient. You're not able to process information properly, and you're feeling more exhausted. What could be worse? But the bad news does not stop here. There are other problems. Number one is that when you're switching from task A to task B, you may have left task A incomplete. And when that happens, when you leave a task incomplete and switch to something else, our brain has a tendency to remember the unfinished tasks a lot more than finished tasks. So if it's unfinished business, your mind is trying to keep track of it. It's scared to forget about it. This is called Zeigarnik effect. So now your mind is carrying the incomplete task and the current task, and now the cognitive overload is even higher. And the third thing which happens is that when you switch from task A to task B, just to go and check a quick email, we think it's a quick check and we will come back. But in studies, what has been found is that when people digress, they don't come back to the original task very quickly. In fact, in one very interesting study done by Professor Gloria Mark, she found that when people move away from a task, it takes them on an average 25 minutes to come back to the task because they get caught up in some other things. So, in summary, when you are switching your attention and multitasking, all these three things are happening and you are going to be feeling overloaded, stressed, anxious. What does it mean? It means that if you have a lot to do, what should you do? Do one thing at a time. The irony is that the people who are really busy, they are the ones who need to be the most focused, and yet they are the ones who do most multitasking. If this is not ironical, I don't know what is. So the next time you have the temptation to quickly check your Slack or your email or something, remind yourself, it's not a quick check. You are going to create attention residue, possibly Zeigarnik effect, and who knows, you may come back only after 20-30 minutes. So stay with the task, finish it, get it done, and then move on. Thank you.